Look, it's the Prophecy Brothers. Starring Brother Man and Brother Champion. They are brothers. They are unorthodox. Tonight's guest star, G. Edward Griffin.
Good evening and welcome to the Prophecy Brothers. I'm Brother Man. Brother Champion couldn't join us tonight, so Anti-Oligarchy is sitting in. Welcome, Auntie.
Welcome.
Well, we've got an exciting show tonight, and Auntie, why don't you let our audience know who's going to join us?
All right. Tonight's guest is G. Edward Griffin. He is a writer, documentary film producer, and founder of Freedom Force International. Listed in Who's Who in America, he is well known because of his talent for researching difficult topics, presenting them in clear terms that all can understand. He has dealt with such diverse topics such as archaeology and ancient Earth history, the Federal Reserve System, international banking, terrorism, international subversion, the history of taxation, U.S. foreign policy, the science and politics of cancer therapy, the Supreme Court, and the United Nations. He is the founder and chairman of Freedom Force International.
So for the next 36 hours, we're going to be talking to G. Edward Griffin about everything. And the temptation's there to do that. Thank you for joining us on the Prophecy Brothers, Mr. Griffin.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I was getting worn out just thinking about all that stuff that we've covered. We have time to cover all of that, so let's go.
And I'll explain to our audience here, and we talked a little bit beforehand. We are the Prophecy Brothers. We also did the Liberty Show, and we're sort of combining those two shows. So we will be talking about liberty issues on tonight's show. But Mr. Griffin, wherever you want to go with some of this stuff, if you wanted to head into any kind of Christian stuff, I know with your organization you don't necessarily want to do that, but you are welcome to go on to any topic you would like tonight. So I thought we'd start off with people I think know you best for this book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. And I was wondering if you could just kind of give us a short synopsis overview of what that's about and why it's important to the average American.
Yeah, the trick to that is making it a short synopsis. The Federal Reserve System is a great puzzle to most people. It's to me, it's like a very good magic show. I mean, you go and you look and you see and you don't believe, but you don't understand it, and you say, "How can that be?" And you walk out of the theater and you think, "Well, I guess I don't need to know because it's better that I don't know." It's more fun that way. I think some people have that attitude about our banking system and our monetary system. How does that work? Gee, it doesn't seem to be working quite right, but it's magical. There's money all over the place. People, they use it internationally now, and it goes up in value, it goes down in value. Now we got cryptocurrencies. How does that work? Oh, I guess I don't need to know. It's better that I don't know. I'll leave it up to the experts, But your question is right to the point. Why do we care, or something like that? What do we need to know, and why should we need to know about it? Well, we need to know about it because money, and that's the reason, money, and it's not because money is evil, because I don't think money is evil. I think money is merely a measure of the degree to which we can call on the services of other people. Money is merely a medium of exchange, and it's not evil. Evil people use money for evil purposes. Good people use money for good purposes. So it's not just about money itself, but the fact of it is that money is at the heart of just about every human exchange, every interaction of any significance on the planet in our whole life. Everything we do involves. If we were living in the old days, it would be barter. I give you one cow, and you give me maybe something you've made with your hand, a weapon or something like that. That's not money. That's just barter. That's an exchange of goods or services. But once we got into that period of time where people were exchanging something not for its immediate use, but for its deferred use, for later on being exchanged for something. And that happened in history when people started to save wheat. Wheat was actually one of the first, probably the first form of official money used. You could grow more wheat than you could eat. So what'd you do, throw it away? No, you put it in jars. And when they dug up those ancient tablets that were buried in those ancient cities, Nineveh and so forth, and back in the Middle East, the cradle of civilization, they dug down and they came to the floors of old temples, and they went beneath the floors and they found thousands of tablets, clay tablets. Oh, they thought this is the written record of mankind from the very beginning, back to Adam and Eve practically. And they dug these tablets up and they indexed them, and then they found some people that could actually read them. And to their amazement, most of them were records of how many jars of wheat had been exchanged between two people. And it was money. Jars of wheat were being used as money because it could be deferred. You could have more wheat than you want. And you say, gee, later on I want that cow. I'll give you 2 jars of wheat. You give me your cow. And so when you exchange something that is not immediately used for itself, but is merely a medium of exchange, and that's the definition of money, is something that's a medium of exchange. Now you're on the springboard for advanced civilization. Now people can really start to work and perform services for things unknown for the future, because you have this ability to put aside value and you don't have to consume it right away. And that was the beginning really of modern civilization. And today, of course, we have a medium of exchange for everything, every transaction we make, except for cash transactions, of course. But every other transaction goes through some kind of a system, like the banking system, or a credit card system, or a debit card system, or a rewards card system, or something like that. And wouldn't you know, there are people in the background that are getting a little piece of every human transaction that's going on in the world. Not only are they getting a little piece of it, but they're making it. They're determining how much of it is put into circulation. They determine its value, and it's indirectly by determining how much is put out there. And by controlling its value, they have the ability to create this mysterious thing called inflation. The fact that we're losing our purchasing power over time. Boy, we got a pay raise last year. Now we're really making some dough, but we find out that by the time we go down to buy that new car that we thought we could afford, well, in the last year, a couple of years, it went up by another $800 or $900, and the pay raise was all consumed by inflation. So you ask, why is this important? It's because the people that do control the creation, the distribution, the cost of money, meaning the interest rates and so forth, how much of it's there. They determine who gets it, who has the highest credit ratings, who gets the best interest loans and so forth. Those people are the hidden rulers of us, and we don't even know it, because they control our lives indirectly through economics. And this is not the topic of my book, however. As you know, my book's more about history. But I think somebody ought to write a book about how much control there is over every aspect of our lives today by people who we don't even know. We don't even know they're out there. We don't know their names. We don't even know that they're there for the most part. Who is it at the IMF? Who is it at the Federal Reserve? Who are these central bankers? Who are the people that determine who the president must appoint to the chairman of the board of the Federal Reserve? You think the president makes that decision? Unfortunately, most people do. But when you look at history, you realize the president appoints these chairmen to the board of the Federal Reserve System, and he's never met the people before he appoints them. He doesn't pull their names out of his address book. Those names are presented to him by his big donors during the campaign. He had to make a deal. All presidential candidates make deals with their donors. And one of those deals is, well, who are you going to appoint to be chairman of the Fed? Who are you going to appoint to be Secretary of State? All these appointments. Who are you going to appoint to the Supreme Court? Little things like that. And you trace all of that back, and it's to money. He who controls the money really controls all of that. So that's the answer to your question, because the hidden controllers of the monetary system are our rulers. And it's time that we find out that we have rulers, and then we better find out who they are, and then we better figure out a way to get rid of them.
Yeah, that's that is definitely very, very well put for, I think, for people to understand. And early on, you had said that money is not good or bad, but it can be used for good or bad. And one of the things that I think you touched a little bit on in the book here. I have not made it all the way through yet, but I think the Federal Reserve, and you'd probably agree, probably when you first wrote this book, people weren't aware of the Federal Reserve, and if they were, they thought it was a government agency. And now more people are, informed about it, and they understand the economic cycles maybe, or that the Fed has something to do with that. But it's that the money that they created and what they do with it might surprise, or what that has led to. And how is that maybe one of the consequences that maybe people don't realize is maybe the warfare state, or the warfare state. Could you tell us a little bit about how the Federal Reserve has, in that printing of money and that inflation, how that has led to our foreign interventions and maybe even Iran and North Korea, some of the problems we have with those today, if it's related at all?
It's a very complex question, and it's also at the same time a very simple question. If you want to get into the mechanics of it, it gets to be very complex. You've got to get your who's who of the kingmakers of the world out in front of you and figure out how they work together, how many of them are in the same corporate structures, what banking dynasties are involved, and all that. But the simple answer is that it's expensive to be an empire. And if you want to create an empire, and some people want to create an empire because they figure that they're either going to be the emperor or very close to the emperor. To create an empire and be a part of the ruling elite is a very heady game. This is power. This is wealth. This is privilege. So a lot of people, numerically a lot of people, a very small percentage of people, but numerically enough people to make it happen, really want an empire. Empires cost money. It costs money to have an army. And in our case now in the modern world, it's not just an army. You have to have a global army. You have to have your army in hundreds of different countries. You've got to have armies standing by, ready to be mobilized here, there, and everywhere. You have to have supplies for the army. You've got to have control of communications. You've got to have control of the educational system. You've got to have control, and control costs money. And of course, if you're an empire in the real world of today, that doesn't necessarily mean the government. The heads of empires in today's world are not even in government at all. They're outside of government, and government happens to be one of their acquisitions. The people that run the world today are not holding government office. They're not in government, but they determine who is in government. A moment ago, I said money buys, a lot of power. Well, the way it buys power is you can buy politicians. They are for sale, folks. Politicians are for sale, in case you hadn't noticed. That's what lobbying is all about. So if you have enough money, and in fact, if you make the bloody stuff, if you've been given the power by politicians who you first bought in the first place, back in 1913, the political system was purchased one vote at a time by the banking industry, and these guys, some of them not knowing what they were doing, some of them knowing full well what they were doing, passed this law that gave the banking industry the power to create the nation's money. So if you give a private group of people the power to create the nation's money, now you don't have to worry, those people don't have to worry about money. They create it, you see. So if you can create it, and not that they create it for their own spending, but it's the same thing. I should back off on this because it seems like a little bit of a paradox. When the banks create money out of nothing, which they do, well, actually, it's less than money, less than nothing. They create it out of debt. They create a debt instrument like an IOU, and they just turn that into money. That's the short version of it. And so the money really is all, it's represented by debt. So it's really worse than nothing. Money is backed by debt, which means that it's backed by the promise of the borrower to pay it. And if the borrower can't pay it, then he's the slave or the servant of those to whom he owes the money. So that's how that system works in a nutshell. But anyway, so I'm off the track. If you can create money and you have an unlimited amount of money, which is what is happening in the world today when they start a war in Afghanistan or Iraq, or now they want to go to Syria or Lebanon, or they want to, they want to start wars everywhere. Why? Because they're trying to save the world for democracy? Come on, no. They have other reasons. It's world dominance. They want to get people out of office that they don't like and put people in office that they do like, that are subservient to them. So they call that regime change. And they always make it look as though they're fighting to overthrow some bad dictator, which is generally true, but they put another dictator in just as bad, but it happens to be their dictator instead of the other guy's dictator. Come on, take a look at what's really going on. That's the thing. So it costs money to have these color revolutions. It costs money to buy all of these politicians and make it happen. So that's really what's going on. Without the Federal Reserve or some other form of a central bank, the real mechanism here is called central banking. And all countries have it, but not all countries have as big an army to back them up as ours does, which is why our Federal Reserve notes are the dominant currency of the world. It's not because they're worth any more, because they're worth nothing, but if you don't accept them, brother, you're going to be declared as a terrorist state, or a state that's harboring a terrorist group, or some kind of a rogue. You'll be demonized in the world public opinion, and you will be bombed, you will be attacked, and you will be overthrown. So that's the reason the American dollar still is dominant. It's because it's backed by the threat of military force. If you don't accept the dollar, and you don't accept the banking system that we have in place today, brother, you are going to be out. And everybody knows that on the world arena. So if you take away that power, how can you have wars? I mean, history prior to 1913 approximately, I had to look at, this is not a formal study, by the way, but I got curious about this some years ago, and I was looking back at empires and kingdoms that were eventually fell into disrepute and were overthrown from within, not attacked from without, but they just sort of fell apart. And it looked to me like, I was just looking at the tax structure, it looked to me that they were fine until their taxes of the people bumped 40% and above. It seemed to me, it's pretty close to this if it's not 40, but it seemed to me that the people will take any kind of taxation up to about 40%. Once it gets to 45, 50, 55%, then there's a revolution. People aren't going to take it anymore. And so the old king loses his job, the old emperor loses his empire. Unfortunately, a new one comes in, which is not much different, but that's another issue. But the point is the people rebel against excessive taxation, which generally, historically, I think is about that 40% level. Well, now these modern wars that we're facing today cost much more, and not just wars, but dominance in the economic world, dominance in every field, costs much more than 40%. The American people are paying more than 40% of their productive capacity in taxes, much more if they really knew all of what it was. By the time you include the direct taxes, the income taxes, and then let's not forget that hidden tax called inflation. That's a tax, folks. And all of these, you pay the state tax, the county tax, the city tax. You've got sales tax. You've got excise taxes. You add them all up. I don't know what it is. I saw a figure once. I thought, is it really that high? They said it was 65%. 65% or in that range. When you add them all up, when you buy a hot dog and you pay sales tax on that hot dog, don't forget the people that ship that hot dog to the salesman also pay the sales tax on it. And they bought that hot dog from the meat company, and they paid a tax on it and real estate tax on that. And those people who bought it from the farmer, The farmer paid a real estate tax and a sales tax. And you add all of those hidden taxes up. And this study I saw was about 65% of all human activity goes to pay through taxes this government structure that is running our lives. 65%. Now, historically, you hit 40% and that's the end. But we can go to 65 and maybe 85 and maybe 100% because we don't even know we're paying the tax. We say, oh my goodness, look at the cost of living. Anyway, that I think is the long, lengthy answer to your question. How is there a connection between the Federal Reserve and this ability to create money out of nothing? Is there a relationship between that and our foreign adventures and our involvement in other countries and wars? And we're not even talking about welfare now and buying boats and all of that sort of thing. The answer is a huge yes. It has everything to do with it.
And the reason I kind of went down, and I'm sure you both can see that, is just a lot of people, I'm not interested in economics. That stuff's boring. But there's some real world consequences to all of this that they don't know, you know.
Yeah, we're a different group.
Yeah, right.
That's because they have a funny idea of what economics is. They think economics is a course you take in school, and you have to read a book and remember things and answer questions on a test. That's their view of economics. But that's not real economics. Economics is how you are rewarded or disrewarded for your human efforts. Are you incentivized to work, or are you incentivized not to work? Or if you work, does somebody else get the product of your labor even though you don't want them to, even though they're doing things with your money you don't approve of? That's real economics.
Which is extremely fascinating to me, and well, it doesn't matter. But anyway, the thing about empires is they fall. And I feel like we're close. The pendulum is swinging in the other direction at this point. I'm not sure, but it feels like the more people start to understand the real taxation, that you're going to see perhaps a speeding up of the fall. I don't know if I'm making sense or not.
Yeah, that's a common thought, and I think now you don't have to be a philosopher or a historian to come up with that question. How much longer can this go on? Basically, we see all of the measurements of a stable and happy society going down. I mean, when I was a kid in Detroit, I was born in Detroit, and I was born in what people even then considered to be not the good side of Detroit. And but even there, I could go out at night. People walked out at night, walked down the street, and weren't afraid of being mugged. Oh, it happened. Of course, it happened. It always happens someplace. But it was not an epidemic or anything like that. Kids would play. We used to walk over to Belle Isle across the Detroit River. Well, you wouldn't go there with an armored car today, But we used to play over there, and that I'm just picking that as maybe a silly little example, but in all aspects of our lives, we didn't worry about being attacked or being legally stolen from. We thought we had a court system that, by golly, if you were on the side of right and justice, you could go in there and you expected the courts and the juries to decide in your favor. Whereas today, everybody cynically knows that, well, hey, I don't have enough money to hire enough expensive attorneys to win this case. It's not a question of justice. It's a question of how many attorneys can you get, and how many legal loopholes can you find, and can you pay off the judge, and all these things. Can you frighten the jurors into not following their conscience? Where does the media come into play with this and all that? So things have deteriorated, as you said, and you don't have to be a historian or a philosopher to wonder how much longer can this go on, or where is it headed? So that's another issue. I have my own thoughts on it. I think you're right. All empires do collapse. In a way, you can look at an empire or a very large totalitarian government, even if it's not a world empire, it's the same concept at a smaller geographic level. They're parasites. And I often drive through the country of California, especially this time of year in the winter, and I see these beautiful oak trees, especially the very old ones, and the leaves of most of them have gone, and all you see is this gray moss, hanging from the branches and clinging to the trunks of the trees. And you're reminded that that moss is there in the summertime, but you sometimes don't see it because the leaves are green. But when you look at them in the wintertime, you realize that moss is a parasite, and it's gradually sucking the life out of that tree. And when you see a lot of moss on an oak tree, it's not long for this world, because it's going down. Now, it's the moss, I'm told, attacks the older trees and the diseased trees because they're weaker and can't resist it. But by the same token, whatever life is left in the tree is going to be sucked out of it by the parasite, and the tree is going to die either because of that, or it's going to die a lot sooner than it would have without that. And then at that point, the moss is dead too. And this is an interesting thing about parasites and big governments and empires, is that they do suck the life out of the economy and out of the social fabric, out of the spirit of the people. But it can go on for a long time, but it just gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And then when the nation dies, so does the tyranny, because it can no longer feed off of anything productive. But until that happens, the tyranny doesn't care. Says, I'll let somebody else worry about that. I just worry about me now and for the next 4 years in office. That's the mentality of this kind of a parasite. So how long can that go on? I don't know, but I do know it can't go on forever. So it's our job, I think, if we can execute the task, is to make people aware of the fact that the system that they are cheering on today, and they're asking the system to take care of their lives, to redistribute wealth, this collectivist system that sometimes we call socialism, sometimes we call communism, fascism, Nazism, all those words, strip them aside. It's collectivism. It's built on the concept that the group is more important than the individual. And the individual must be sacrificed, if necessary, for the greater good of the greater number, and all of that nonsense. That is the parasite. And we have to wake people up to realize that you can get rid of this guy because you don't like the way he talks. You can get rid of this guy because you don't like his social philosophy. Rid of this person because, well, they belong to the wrong political party. But those people come and go as long as the basic system remains of collectivism, which they all support. You're not going to change anything by changing from one face or one political party or one gender to another. As long as the system of collectivism remains, the parasite remains and the nation continues to die. That's the first step. If we want to make a change, we must understand what the parasite is.
Speaking of groups, do they try to mask some of this stuff with the divide and conquer? One of the buzzwords now, if you're in any kind of business, is diversity, diversity, diversity. And in my opinion, when you talk about that, then you're bringing focus to people that they're in groups and they're different. And of course, we've got, there's ethnicities fighting against each other. There might be sexual orientation. And it seems that they just want to constantly put us into groups, and we're blaming each other group while we're not seeing what's going on up here. Do you think that that's a concerted effort, or is that just coincidence? Or
well, it's certainly not a coincidence. The concept of divide and conquer is as old as history books, and it's certainly been mastered. And now that we know so much more about human psychology than we did 100 or 200 years ago, the science of psychology is now being applied, and motivational studies and things. These are really scientists that are working on this. And there's no doubt, you can see it everywhere. If you just look, we are being asked to choose up sides in conflicts. We're not being asked to look for commonality. We're not being asked to look for solutions. We're being asked, as George Bush II said, are you with us or against us? You have to choose up. Are you Republican or Democrat? Are you a right-winger or a left-winger? Are you for the Antifa left, or are you for the alt-right? Hey, wait a minute, guys. I'm not on either side. Anybody asking me my opinion? I'm none of these choices. But the way the social engineers are programming us, especially through the media, the debates that come up on the media and the news stories on the media are always who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? Are they the ones on the left or the ones on the right? Are they the commies or are they the Nazis? Which one do you want to be? You know,
Neither.
yeah, that's right. The whites against the blacks, the Christians against the Muslims, the women against the men. See, that's it. Everywhere you look, it's that division to get everybody so they have no unity, no cultural unity. And if we lose our cultural unity, our affection for each other as a nation or as a people, as a culture, if they can shatter our culture, we will be destroyed. It's as simple as that. They know it better than we. When I say we, I mean we who are the target. Most people we talk to have never even thought about this. But our enemies not only have thought about it, they've mastered the technique of using it. There's another one of our challenges. Maybe later, you said we might talk about Red Pill University. It's exposing this strategy and doing something about it. And these other strategies that we're talking about is one of the things that Red Pill University is going to undertake, is already undertaking. And it's essential that we bring this information to the attention not only of the American people, but people all around the world, because these same tactics are being used in every major country of the world.
Well, we have, there's still 2 in high school. We have 2 in college, 2 in high school. But we hear and they're in public school, and so they come home and we just hear some of the stuff that they're being taught. You know, not reading, writing, arithmetic, but the social stuff. And I just think it's gotten worse. Everybody's so touchy with stuff. Was it last year? I had shown my kids All in the Family. And if you remember that show, they could joke about this stuff and bring light to it. And Archie and George Jefferson were going at it. And my kids just were like, what? They couldn't believe that was on TV at one point. But everybody is just so touchy now about everything.
Yeah.
And
political correctness.
Political correctness,
It's whacked us hard as a culture.
Yeah. You know, one thing we talked a little bit about the Fed and the money, and I know we've gone into some other things, but cryptocurrencies is a really big topic now, and you know, we were told that the cryptos were devised to be a competing currency to the central bank's currencies. And I just wanted to know, in your opinion, I mean, do you think the central banks are really afraid of that? And the reason I ask that is because, you know, us being in the financial industry, or you can even go to the store, they check your $5 bill with a marker. And a bank will freak out if a fake 20 goes. Or there was a guy a few years ago that was minting his own silver coins, and they went after him, and none of these people could do the amount of damage to the currency or whatever, but they just didn't want anything to compete with their Federal Reserve note. So how could they let Bitcoin cryptocurrencies, how could they allow that competing currency to go on when they freak out if somebody passes a fake 20? I don't know if that makes sense what I'm asking, but I mean, do you think that this is something that they're allowing to happen to seize it at some point, the technology?
Yeah, that's another one of the things that Red Pill University is going to be very strong in getting the word out on. The shocking truth of this really is that, yes, the banks and the governments were well aware of the power of cryptocurrencies long before most people. Most of the Bitcoin advocates of today are newcomers to this issue. The banks and the governments were aware of it from the very beginning. And being the kind of very deliberate and intelligent people that they are, they thought it through, and they said, look, this cryptocurrencies, or at least blockchain technology, let's separate that out. Those are 2 different things. Most people don't realize they're two different things, but it's the technology called blockchain technology that's really the threat. And using that technology as a currency is only one of many applications for it, but it's the one that got all the media and all the attention. And we were told from the beginning, well, this is going to squeeze the banks out of the equation. They're not going to be able to get their fees anymore. Remember a moment ago I said every transaction they get a little bite out of it. Well, that's what they were talking about. We don't want the banks to get a bite out of all these transactions anymore and all these high fees. We're going to bypass that. And said, oh, yeah, let's find out what this is all about. Meanwhile, the banks are quietly working in the background, figuring out how to use that technology for them, to gain fees and control for them. Even though all the talk is about, oh, it's going to defeat the banks, and they're not going to like this. They love it. They intend to dominate it. They intend to see the cryptocurrency replace money. We talk about the cashless society. This is it. They know this is what they want. Now, right now we have a lot of pros and cons. Well, what's it going to be, good or bad? Have you noticed that Bitcoin, for example, let me put a freeze frame on that. I own Bitcoin, right? I like the idea of cryptocurrency. I like the objective of Bitcoin, which is to challenge the currency system and the inflation. I like that. I like the fact that there's limited amount of coins that can be created before the whole thing comes to a stop. I like a limitation on money. I like all of that. But let's look a little bit deeper. What else is going on? Bitcoin, I don't know if you want to get into this. I'll take a moment. I'll try and make this short. But Bitcoin, from the beginning, had a built-in limitation. It has only so many megabytes in each transaction. And so it can only handle so many transactions per second. I've forgotten what it is, but let's say it's around 7,000 transactions per second, the whole system. Well, it's been fine up until recently because the system has just started. Now, as it's whopping along, and not only thousands, but tens of thousands, and now hundreds of thousands of people, whole countries now seem to be moving into Bitcoin. They all want to transfer their savings from the assets of money and the national currency into Bitcoin. The demand now is for so many transactions per second that the Bitcoin cannot handle it. It's just not built to handle it. I don't know what the current time delay is, but I've heard reports of 4 and 5 minutes. One person told me that they had to wait a day for a transaction to complete. And not only that, I've been told that the transactions on some of these are not insignificant. I saw a report on video. I haven't confirmed it, but I believe it's true. There was a $24 transaction for a fee for a Bitcoin transaction. So what's all this talk about the no fees and everything and putting the banks out of business? Now the plot thickens. We find out that who is making these decisions? It's a group of people, sort of like Wikipedia. It seems to be like a public group. Nobody seems to have control over it. You bet they have control over it. There's a group of people that have come from a company that was financed by the banks, heavily financed by the banks, to create the experts and the advisors who would be the leaders in this industry. And it was financed by the banks. They've spent millions and millions of dollars. And now the people have gone through this company, and they've been the ones that have gone into the system of Bitcoin. They have become the dominant ones, and they have made the decisions on what Bitcoin will do. In other words, indirectly, the bank's agents now are in control of Bitcoin, the decisions. What's the first decision that was really of significance? And that was, shall we increase the bit size of Bitcoin so it can handle more transactions and actually serve its function as a currency? And they voted no. They voted to deliberately hobble their own currency. Why? Because that forces another system to clear those transactions outside of Bitcoin. Now the solution that they're offering is that we have little holding houses. In other words, if you're a big company, let's say you're Target or Kmart or something like that, you would be you would have your own account with Bitcoin, And then you would be able to handle the accounts of all of your customers in your account. And you can make your transactions with them all day long, all week long. And then once a week, you make one transaction with Bitcoin. And at that one transaction, everything gets resettled. And it's only one transaction instead of hundreds and hundreds of thousands. And that's a perfectly technically good solution. The only trouble is now it goes through outside of Bitcoin. So whoever runs the system outside of Bitcoin, I think they call them clearinghouses or something like they used to call clearinghouses for the checks and banks. Guess who's running these? The banks. Now they're collecting fees on digital transactions because Bitcoin was deliberately throttled down and forces everybody to go outside of Bitcoin to actually make daily transactions without having to wait for a transaction to occur. And they did this deliberately. Now, I just touched the tip of the iceberg here. I think it's important that people know that there are very smart, cunning criminals running the world. Okay? They have to realize this. And they have to get this idea out of their head that anybody that thinks this way is a conspiracy theorist. They've been taught to think that. So, this couldn't possibly happen. Let me tell you, folks, this really does happen every day. And it affects you every day and every minute. It's now affecting your financial transactions in the monetary world. Wait till you get transferred over to cryptocurrency and see how it feels. This is my answer to that question.
Can I tell you my Bitcoin story real quick? I dabbled in it a little bit, and I'll make sure I tell my viewers. I only had $75 into it, and I didn't buy it when it was a penny, so I was not a Bitcoin millionaire or anything. But I decided, well, I'm going to get rid of it and do a transaction. And that's a whole different thing. It's like, okay, I could buy it, but then how do I get rid of it? And then, and I guess if you're going to get into it, think about that as well. And then the wallet that I used wasn't supported anymore, and luckily somehow I recovered it. And I tried to make a transaction, and then I found out that there's low fee transactions which they might not process. And I thought I had lost my Bitcoin, and I don't even know how I got it back, but I had to go to a higher fee. And then there was some company that I tried tracking the Bitcoin, and it says, well, we'll speed up the transaction for you for $239.
There you go.
And
it was 75.
Or what?
Yeah.
That's exactly it. It was that $239, that slowdown, that's forcing people to move outside of the Bitcoin world to clear their Bitcoin transactions in these clearinghouses. So that's the gimmick that's being used. And after this one, there'll be another one. And after that, there'll be another one yet. And that, as long as these people are running the show and we give them the power to do this, that's what we have to expect. When you say, oh, we have to have authorities, we have to have government take care of all of this. Once you yield your personal responsibility for your life, you have just given a blank check to crooks because they've just been waiting for you to do that. And all of these politicians, most of them, not all, I'm going to say most of them, are nothing but con artists. Most politicians are con artists. And I never met a con artist I didn't like before I found out he was a con artist. You know? And that's how they work. I mean, these guys really look good. And they'll come in and they talk about the Constitution, and they talk about that bad crowd in New York. Oh, you can't trust Hillary. She's bad, you know. Whatever they'll point out the truth, and they win your confidence. Now, there's a person that's really talking straight. I'm going to vote for him or her. Bingo, you got the same thing, only worse. Again, you know, they're con artists, folks. Get rid of this idea of turning over responsibility for your lives to some authority that you give power to rule over you. That's what empires are built upon.
And, you know, maybe that's a good segue into Red Pill University. To our audience, maybe we've jumped around a lot, but at Red Pill, you cover, I think, a lot of these topics, if not more, correct? And can you tell us more about that and what your goal is with Red Pill?
Oh, yeah, sure. I think most people are pretty clear on what Red Pill is all about. But for those few that don't, there's sort of a meme out there. It's take the red pill. And that comes from the movie called The Matrix. It was a science fiction movie, very popular, kind of a cultish film. I enjoyed watching it. And in the movie, mankind has already been taken over by this vast system. I look at it as our collectivist world system is really the Matrix. It's got control of their brains. It's got control of their thoughts, their lives. They're living in an illusion. Like most people, including myself, I'm sure I'm still living in illusions that I don't know about. We're all living these illusions. We think life is this way, but it's not that way at all. It's just the opposite. We're being fooled, being taken advantage of. We're being, what's the word? Pwned, is that the word? If you play these games, been pwned. I just heard about that, and we've been pwned. So the idea of taking the red pill, which in the movie gives you the ability to see reality as it is the theme that we've built this Red Pill University on. We had the first Red Pill Expo held last June, and we thought, well, we'll see how this goes. If this rings a bell with people, and we're tired about talking about, read the Constitution, defend your liberties. Don't you realize you have a responsibility for citizenship and all of the things that are true? And I'm all for them, believe me, but people get kind of worn out hearing that, especially the young folks. And especially the people in other countries. What do they care about our Constitution? They look at us and they say, do we want to be like Americans now? Look what kind of government they got. Is that what we get if we follow the Constitution? That doesn't really work anymore. You've got to talk about what was in that Constitution at one time that made it great. Not, we have to talk about principles and not just the Constitution. So we thought, let's try the red pill and see if it resonates. Well, I want to cut to the chase. It resonated. We thought we were going to have about 150, 200 people show up for our first expo. We held it in Bozeman, Montana, of all places. Who wants to go to Bozeman? Well, it turned out a lot of people want to go to Bozeman. They thought it was a place they always wanted to see. Montana. Why would you go to Montana except just to see it? Well, this gave people two reasons to go to Montana. To go to the expo and to see Montana. And we had 600 people show up at great expense to themselves. We had 12 countries were represented. People came out of the woodwork in response to this idea of the illusion versus the reality. And the slogan of the expo was, because you know something is wrong. And that sort of sums it all up. We all, even though people that don't read and don't really understand and don't have time for all this, they're immersed in their lives, working for a living, raising a family, but they just know it's something not right out there. This isn't right. So working on that concept, which is kind of simple, people came out to see if we had some idea about what was wrong. Well, we do. We talked about the things, for example, that we touched on here earlier, plus a lot more. And we brought in what we call as faculty, from the best faculty we could find. We really had some top-notch people there. We had Lord Monckton, for example, from the UK. We had Robert Kiyosaki there, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He's written the most popular, best-selling business investment book ever. And people of that caliber, teachers, journalists, authors. We had 22 different people there as faculty. So the bottom line is it was a roaring success. People went out of there saying, this theme and focusing on illusion versus reality and the topics you had, they considered it to be the best event that they had ever gone to. Well, that really stoked our fire. We thought we've hit it. We've got the theme. Now, how do we pump it up? How do we make it bigger? So we walked out of there thinking, well, we got to do something to continue this outreach 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, not just once a year in Bozeman or some other place. So the idea hit us to form the Red Pill University. And that is what we now have got going. I'll just say that the Red Pill University is sort of like an extension of the Red Pill Expo, but it's on the internet. And we've invited our teachers, our journalists, and all of our faculty from all around the world to contribute their material by video. And it's all coming together now. We're putting the machine together right now into redpilluniversity.org. And so the best way to answer what it is to say it's the Red Pill Expo on steroids, but it's on the internet. And not only that, we've set it up so that we can establish campuses locally all around the world. We're starting, of course, with the United States. We already have 2 campuses in the U.S. We want to have at least one campus in every county in the United States, because it's not just knowledge that we're trying to impart, although that's essential. But once you have this knowledge, you have to do something with it. You know, there's an old saying that knowledge is power. Well, I would say that's half true. Knowledge can be power, but by itself, it's not. Very knowledgeable people. I mean, the world is full of knowledgeable people who died in prison cells or were shot at firing squads. Knowledge didn't help them. You know, you can read all the books in the world. You can go to all the lectures in the world. You get all these recordings, and you can be very smart. But if you don't do something with that knowledge to convert it into some kind of political or social action to actually bring about change in the world in which you live, you've just wasted that knowledge. So what we want to do is blend the knowledge that comes from the faculty side of Red Pill University, blend that with the implementation or activist side that comes with the campuses. Now there we have boots on the ground, and those campuses can be active in local politics. They can help find good candidates. They can hold classrooms. They can hold, one of our projects we're working on right now, having a lot of fun with it, is establishing what classic movies can we have. You know, like John Wayne's The Alamo, or 1984, or Animal Farm. What classic films are there that we could put on in the local town there, let's say in some local theater once a month, and just call it movie night? Something to think about, you know, something like that, or Red Pill movie night, and invite especially the college kids to come out, look at this, have a discussion group about it, and so on. Boots on the ground. That's what the campuses are all about. Now that's the short version, and we're building it right now. I've never been more excited about anything in my life, because I see that this is the theme and this is the time for this to happen. I don't think it could have happened 10 years ago, but the time is right for it now. So to make it short, anybody that wants to participate in this, and I hope everybody wants to do that, please come to the website. It's redpilluniversity.org. It's not hard to remember, redpilluniversity.org. It's being built, but please, folks, help us build it. Come on and enroll. Become a student. Become a mentor. Become a scholar. We have different levels. Help us as best you can financially. We really need the money to develop this. We need a team of people to put this technical machine together. And we need advertising. We need everything. And we need you. I guess that's the bottom line. So if you like the idea, come on to Red Pill University and help us make it a reality. It's redpilluniversity.org.
I like your plan for duplication, and the websites are great for reference, but you're actually promoting them, people to get together and build community. And a lot of times when you watch this stuff online, you figure, I'm the only one that knows this, and then if you can get around some other people, you're like, okay, well, I'm not crazy. There's other people that are seeing this like me.
Yeah. And this is how we build unity. And we have to reverse that diversity stupidity. Yes, there's diversity. Let's viva la diversity, yes, but let's not make that our goal. Let's honor it. Let's appreciate it. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have different traits, and we're different, thank God. Especially women are different from men. Don't stop telling me about it all. There's no difference between men and women. Haven't you noticed lately?
Praise God, we're different.
Thank God, yeah. So thank God for diversity in that sense. But we have to recognize that we all have this commonality that's bigger than our diversity. This common need to be free, common need to be individuals and treat each other with respect and not hatred. That's what it's all about, and we have a shot at it. I don't know how much longer we have, but the window is open right now. So I'm very happy to talk about it. Thanks for asking.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm excited about that. We wish we could have went to the expo. Are you going to have an expo this year?
Yeah. We're struggling right now trying to pick a good place. We'll probably announce that in the next 10 days. And, we're going to have an expo every year. We thought first maybe we'll have 2 a year, but no, I think 1 a year is enough if we have the university operating. When we thought about 2 a year, we were trying to figure out how to extend this. And then the idea is that 2 a year is no good either. 4 a year is no good. We need 365 of them.
This goes back a few years for me, but I just gave an example. And here's kind of what I thought about when I was listening to some of your Red Pill stuff from before. It was on a different podcast you had done. But as far as duplication, and I was in a marketing sales organization, and what they would do is they would have 3 or 4 conferences a year nationally where they'd bring people in, but it was the local people having the local monthly seminars that would build the numbers, and then you might meet nationally. And so that's why I like that idea that you're setting up the local campuses, that gets the people involved, and then they build it that way, and then it's sort of like, hey, let's all get together for this big event.
Yeah.
And,
well, I'm glad you see that, because that's exactly how it works. And that's how the enemies of liberty work. Have you noticed that all these local groups are springing up in little towns? They're funded, of course. They've got the George Soros money and the deep state money and all of that. And we don't have the money, but we have the manpower. They buy their people, most of them. Some of them are real zealots, but most of them wouldn't even be zealots if they didn't get a paycheck from some tax-supported institution. Most of these people out there that we see doing these outrageous things, they turn out to be professors at some tax-supported college. If these guys had to go out and work for a living, they'd be nothing. So they're only there because they've got money supplied by us. But now the people that
she used to teach at a university.
I used to.
Yeah.
No, but I'm talking
So
about.
she knows. Yeah, she knows.
I know exactly what you mean.
So the point is that we have the manpower. We don't have to pay anybody. In fact, these poor people, they come and work for us all day long, and then they make donations besides. This is what we all have to do. I do that, and this gives us a lot more power than money. You can't argue against these billionaires. They've got lots of dough, but the manpower and the spirit and the will and being on the side of truth and right is more powerful than money.
I know you can't say who the speakers are. Some of them probably aren't committed yet. But so topics like we talked about tonight, and any other topics that you think that you could just kind of say what's going to be covered?
I've got a file here. Every time I see something on the internet, I think, oh, now there's a good topic. And okay, stand by. I'm going to pull my file on. You'll see. Let's see, red pill topics. Here we go. We don't have time for all this, but I just go off the top. Oh, this is a great gal. She does something called the Truth Factory. She has an icon of a cat, and she's like, the cat is sitting there as a newscaster. When you think, well, this is really funny. This can't be serious, but this is as serious as it gets once you get over the fact that the cat is talking to you. And I just happened to pull this off. She did a great program. Are the protests in Iran a false flag? Okay, good question. She makes a pretty good case for it. Here's another one. Economics of the singularity. Okay, the singularity. That's much in, that's with artificial intelligence issues and things like that. Is that what it really is about, or is there a hidden agenda about this artificial intelligence? Are they really expecting to do what they're talking about, or are they using that as a cover to control people? Well, interesting point. Now here's this Bitcoin. All right, there's another Bitcoin issue. We'll have a couple of people talking about Bitcoin. What's this one? The truth about the Washington Post coverage of the Russia story, the Russian collusion. And here's a guy found some very interesting statistics on long-term inflation. These were never published any place, but he put the data together, and he'll blow your socks off on inflation. I don't know if you can see it, but let's see. You can't see it, but anyway.
It goes like this. You just got to know it goes up. It goes straight up.
Oh, yeah, John Rappaport is a great guy. He was at our, he delivered a video message at our last expo, and he's always got some poignant thing. He's always talking about the Matrix. Who are the secret financial network who worked with George Soros? Okay, here's one. Nobody knows much about Soros except the sanitized version that they have on the media. They don't know anything about his real background. This guy's got it. You get the idea.
Yeah, so it's a little something for everybody, and probably once somebody gets involved or goes there, they're going to find out something else that they like or become interested.
And that's really kind of the point.
Mm-hmm.
And we've noticed that, everybody's got kind of their own hot button issue, and if we can tap into that.
Yeah. Well, here's the hidden seas of Common Core. That's getting coverage, but maybe not enough. And anyway, it goes on. Dark winter, how the sun is causing a 30-year-old cold spell.
Yeah.
Written by an astrophysicist who knows what he's talking about, etc. There's so many illusions out there, and almost every problem we face, if you think about it, you could analyze it as a problem of illusion versus reality. And that's what we're going to do. And I think that simplifies it for people.
Well, thank you, Mr. Griffin. I really appreciate you joining us tonight and taking the time out and answering some of our questions, and hopefully we brought it all together with the red pill. But I definitely, to our viewers out there, make sure you check out, now I forgot, Red Pill University.org. Okay.
And especially if someone is interested in forming a campus, this is really where this project is going to shine. We want 500 campuses as soon as possible. It's doable.
And your other website is freedomforceinternational.org?
Yes, I want to be very transparent on this because we're proud of it. Red Pill University is really sponsored and directed by Freedom Force International. So anybody that wants to really get involved in this work and become almost a fanatic for liberty, in other words, devote a substantial portion of your life to it, you really need to find out what Freedom Force International is all about. And the website for that is freedomforceinternational.org. And then if somebody wants to come to our commercial site and see what kind of books and recordings we have, that's all at realityzone.com.
And happy 15th anniversary on Freedom Force. Was that last month, right?
Yeah. Yes.
We just happened to look that up. So
it was when we were scheduled the first time with you.
Yeah, it was actually that day, I think December 12th. So
yeah, December 12th. Yeah. Yes. So true.
Well, great. Thanks again for joining us and on the Prophecy Brothers, and thank you for everybody for watching. Make sure you check out Mr. Griffin's website.
Thanks again.
Thank you. See you next time on the Prophecy Brothers.
Take the red pill.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel.